Hello, everybody. Today I wanted to do a landscape, an abstract landscape, but I wanted to experiment using my jelly plate as a stamp, basically, in order to help me make the landscape a bit more abstracted, if that makes sense. So the first thing I'm doing is putting down some base layers and some base paint colors because I have to start there. So that is the first part. I'm using some Celadon green, some Payne's gray, which is that navy color. And because I'm doing wet paint on top of wet paint, some of it's blending a bit. I also didn't have any baby wipes, which I normally keep in my studio. So I didn't really clean my color shaper in between most of the colors. When I did, I just wiped it on a paper towel, so some of it still stayed with me. This is some yellow ochre. I'm using, these colors are all straight from the bottle at this point. I start mixing colors in a bit. And this is just to get something on the page that I can then stamp, have as a stamp background. For this exercise, I have a smaller 5x7 jelly plate. So that's what I'm using, and I'm switching to my golden open paints. The open paints stay wet longer, and it takes them longer to dry, which is helpful when you're doing anything that takes more than a few seconds, so that your colors don't dry on your jelly plate. At least the way that I'm doing it. You can certainly do a lot of painting on your jelly plate, wait for that to dry, and then paint over it with another color, then print it, which I may do another time because this was kind of a fun project. The advantage to doing, or at least maybe not an advantage, the reason that I wanted to try this on the jelly plate rather than just painting directly onto the paper is that it helps abstract it one step further, because I can't exactly plan where things are going to be when I put the mirror image down. Right when I stamp it, I have to turn it upside down to put it back on the paper. It just helps give me some surprises as well, rather than knowing exactly where I'm putting my brush. So 100% experimental today. I was also using a palette knife here, which was a bit aggressive on the color because it didn't allow me to print a thin layer. So this first layer is a bit opaque, which is fine. And this, I'm mixing some turquoise, some Payne's gray, and some white, and then adding a little bit of green gold here at the bottom, or the bottom of that light blue section anyway. So in terms of color palette, I'm using colors here largely straight from the bottle. I'm not doing a lot of mixing to keep it a cohesive color story, which you certainly don't have to do. I have been doing that though for the past 6 months, maybe 12 months, which helps things feel cohesive right off the bat. But it's fun also just to experiment with different colors together, not knowing what you're going to get. And I've been using these colors a lot together, so at least I had some feel that I liked them together. And because it's a jelly plate, you don't just get one stamp, or one pull from the plate. So I'm able to stamp them on both sides of this to keep these two cohesive, even though I'm putting the colors in different areas and using different methods of application. So I sprayed a little bit of water just to see some of that Payne's gray show through the light blue. And because these are open paints, the colors stay wet a little bit longer, so I'm able to use the spray method with these water droplets even after I've applied a very thin layer. Normally the acrylic paint would dry and you wouldn't be able to do that. So it was nice to be able to have a little extra time. I know my jelly plate looks very messy, and it is, but that's on the other side of the plate. So I was using a clean plate in order to do these printing pulls. Now I was looking to mix up a green or to see what colors I would get with the Payne's gray, a little bit of white from that light blue, and some yellow ochre. And ultimately I ended up with a gray. It's a bit of a gray-green, but it's very gray. And I ended up liking that color. Again, this was largely experimental on many fronts. But the advantage of mixing some of the colors, as I said before, is it really helps keep your color story a bit more cohesive. Sorry, the jelly plate's out of the shot. I was getting some supplies. So I have these teeny rubber bands that my kids use to make rainbow bracelets. It's called like Rainbow Loom, I think. But if I use them as a resist, it adds some fun shapes. So the color I'm adding is almost a dark celadon. But do you see how the lighter celadon shows through and the green gold because of the rubber bands I added for the resist? So unfortunately, my camera filled up while I was doing the red, but I just took a small paintbrush and put some red dots and a couple red circles on. And I added these stripes, which is collage, the black and white stripes. A little bit of pastel, actually Neocolor 1 crayons, and that light blue color kind of on the horizon line, and the brown. And I'm going back in with some, I believe that was quinacridone gold, just to add another layer on top of the yellow ochre areas. And even though this looks, well, in some ways to me it looks very random, in other ways it looks like it's getting more and more cohesive. Using similar colors and just spreading things around. Always adding some white. I'm still a bit unsure about that white part on the right side, but I liked it better on the left. I'm trying to use the same tools but use them in different ways just to get different marks. So with these lighter blue areas that almost look like clouds over water or something. It's just a different application with the color shaper. In true variability, I would be using a variety of brushes all the time. But I'm very color shaper focused right now for whatever reason. I like using it, so I'm just honoring that impulse and I'm going to keep using it, but still striving for different uses. This is one of these, I added teeny little liner brushes, and I wanted to get two things. I wanted to get a different shape, so this line is very different from everything else on the page. And I wanted to get a higher contrast color. So this black on top of white is the highest contrast you can get. So just a little bit something so that the black and white striped collage pieces didn't seem so far away from everything else. And just to create more interest. Anything you add that's different from what's already there will keep people interested and their eyes moving around the page or the canvas or whatever you're painting on. I wanted the black mark on the left to be more subtle, so I did cover over it with the white, but you can still see it underneath. And you can see I just alternated back and forth, adding dark colors on light, adding light colors on dark, just building layers, building layers, building layers. Even when you cover over layers, I don't know why it works. It's some sort of, painting magic. But even if you never see the bottom 3 layers of your painting, they still add to the overall feel of your artwork. I don't know if it's just coming through just enough, if it just impacts the layers above it just enough. That's probably what it is. But there's something, I don't know, I probably sound very silly, but there's just some sort of like art magic that happens that if you're adding to an existing layer, it builds like exponentially. So instead of it feeling like there's just 2 layers, it'll feel like it's 4. If there's 4 layers, it'll feel like it's 16. Obviously, it's not quite as logical as that, but it, now that argument is logical, it's not as exact as that, but to me, it feels like you can just tell. You can tell when a painting has lots of love poured into it and lots of layers in it. It has more history. It's more interesting. And even though lots of this collage paper I added a lot of white on top of that white square, you can still notice that there's extra white on there because all whites are a little bit different. And with the texture being different, if you look closely, you'll notice that the white on top of white still shows up. Now here, unfortunately, the Payne's gray at the top was not dry when I did that, so I did carry some of the Payne's gray down through the white with me. But look at that. It's gone. You can easily paint over. So I made a few adjustments to these after I stopped recording. So this is basically where they ended up. And then the very final pictures I'll show you is where they are today. So I added a little bit of glazing, and that's about it. So what do you guys think? Have you done this before? Do you want to try it? Using the stamp, the Gelli plate as a stamp was pretty fun. I will definitely do it again. I will probably do it differently next time, to try new things and see how it goes. I certainly could have done it more. I did a lot of painting directly on the piece. but you can see how it looks with crisp edges. And I think things always look better framed and matted. So here are the final pieces. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye.